I gained a little weight this summer. So what's the sewist to do? I'm a person who makes my own clothes, but I hope that my body won't stay this size for a long time. So what do I make? If you have ever found yourself with a little bit of extra weight and you're a person who makes clothes for yourself, this is going to be the video for you as to what I plan on doing to still have clothes for myself to wear, but also that I know I will be able to use for a long time. So stick around and see if any of these things can help you too. Hello, welcome to Show and Tell Meg. I'm Megan and I like to make things and I love to sew my own clothes. I am wearing a shirt and a skirt that I made myself. This I made last summer. The skirt I made years ago. And that's the type of sewist that I am. I am not someone who chases trends. I know the kinds of silhouettes that I feel comfortable in, that I like the look of, that I feel represent me and my personality. And so I don't care what the current trends are. I just try to go with classic things that I know I'm going to like and I know I'm going to wear for as long as possible, as long as the fabric will hold up, basically. And so when your body is changing, it can really throw a wrench in the works. I used to be heavier. Several years ago, I decided that I was going to lose some weight for health reasons and things like that. This is no comment on anybody's size. Please don't take it that way. But for me personally, that was what I wanted to do. And so I lost 55 pounds. I went from sewing everything all the time, like constantly sewing myself clothes, to suddenly I didn't want to sew anything because I hoped I wouldn't stay the size that I was. With me, I know, like with most people, when I pull out a new pattern, I have to go through and make a mock-up and I have to tweak and make sure that it fits me everywhere. And so the thought of doing all that work to make one item that maybe would fit me for a month or so, and then I'd have to do all that work again, I was just not interested in doing that. And so I put off sewing for a very long time. It was exclusively knitting and crocheting things because they're stretchy. And so it didn't matter, stretching will forgive a lot in your sizing. And so knitwear was a totally different ball game. I have a certain style that I like. I, over the years, have just realized how much I enjoy wearing skirts. They just have to fit at the waist, flare away at the hip, and then it's breezy and cool. And I live in a very hot place. And so those are things that I very much value. They can last me for decades. I have this skirt that I'm wearing, I made in, I think, 2016 or 2017. I have other skirts I still actively wear that I made longer than that ago. So when I was larger, one of my absolute favorite patterns is the Melissa dress skirt and top by Muse Patterns. It has absolutely paid for itself because it has been a winner. I have made, I think, 6 or 7 of these over the last 10 years. Some of them have not turned out great because I did not use good fabric, but the ones that did became my absolute workhorse skirts. They were solid colors. They were made in sturdy fabrics. And so they basically replaced jeans for me. I could just throw a t-shirt on with one of these skirts and I felt comfortable and it looked cute. And so that was an essential part of my wardrobe for a very long time. But then I started to lose weight and the ones that fit me now were large. And I realized that this is kind of the perfect pattern for someone who is actively losing weight. And I will show you why. This is my last Melissa skirt that I made. So it had to have been in 2019, spring, summer of 2019. And I ended up extending the waist because I was just outside of the pattern range. I did my standard alteration, which is to make the pockets a little bit wider. I could barely fit my hand in it as it's drafted. And this was also made, this pattern was drafted over 10 years ago. So the pockets weren't designed to accommodate today's width of cell phones, right? So I did add, I think, a 1/2 inch to each side of each pocket panel. And then I also had to add at the side waist panels. And therefore I had to add at the waistband. But it all worked out. It fit me. I was comfortable. And then when I started losing weight, I realized that these adorable pockets also make this the absolute perfect candidate for taking it in. The sides of this skirt, they have side panels, and the way that I made this, I finished all of my edges inside with a serger, and then I pressed each seam allowance to one side, and I top stitched it down. Because of that, I was able, see that gray serger thread? I was able to literally just pinch in how much I needed this to be smaller and serge all the way down. And then I just redid the top stitching. Yes, it did add a seam into the waistband, which typically you don't have. So this does add just the teensiest bit of bulk because I now have a seam allowance that's folded over in the waistband, but it made it where I could wear this skirt again. I ended up taking this skirt in, I think 3 different times over the course of that time that I was losing all that weight. It does not affect how it hangs on my body when I wear it because all the seams are so flat. So this is the perfect skirt for me to sew currently. I really want to make another denim version of this so that I can have a denim skirt again because all of my ones I have right now don't fit me. I'll be able to take it in at will if I manage to lose this weight. So I'm going to take you through the process of me making this skirt and we're going to see how it turns out. I have decided that I want to make this a flat front skirt, not a button front. Don't get me wrong, I love the button front and I've made several and I've worn the daylights out of them. But when you have a more prominent front abdomen, it does make the area a little more prominent because there's now buttons and extra fabric there. And since I'm contemplating using this heavy rigid denim, I'm thinking I want to make it just a flat front. So I'm going to show you how I do that. I'm going to use this skirt as a model since I know this one fits me, and I'm going to lay the pattern pieces on top, figure out how wide I need to make this gore. It's going to technically be a center gore of a gored skirt, but I'm going to cut it on the fold so it'll just be totally flat across the front. I'm going to have to do a little pattern finagling, see where I'm at compared to where I want it to be, and then I'm also going to have to put a zipper in the back. That is what I want to do. So now we're going to go to the cutting table and lay out some pattern pieces and see what I need to change. All right, I have all of my pattern pieces pinned, all the adjustments I have marked on there. So now I'm going to cut this. Just FYI, this is a 60-inch wide piece of fabric and I managed to get all of these pieces on 1.25 yards. So if you need a skirt that does not take a ton of fabric, even in bigger sizes, this one is a winner. All right, all the pieces are cut out. So now it's time to start notching. There are lots of notches in this pattern because there are so many gores and you have to make sure that the right ones fit together. So I'm going to do that and then we will start sewing. I have started working on this again tonight. I used a test piece of the fabric, tested out my stitch tension, stitch length, all that kind of thing. It's holding up good and it's looking nice and seamless in there. So I went ahead and did kind of the hardest part of this pattern, which is really not very hard. I assembled the pockets. So this is the entire pocket panel. It's all put together now. It's actually 3 different pieces. And since this is a paid pattern, I didn't want to show too much of how that's done. But that part is now finished. And so now I can move on to assembling all of the other gores in this skirt to get it to be a big skirt, essentially. I have everything pieced together. Here's my flat center front. So I have not top stitched any of my seams because I wanted to make sure that everything was going to fit. When I put it on, oh man, I over anticipated how much I would need, apparently. So since I'm going to be putting a zipper here, I'm actually going to bring this skirt with me to my mom's tomorrow and have her mark where it comes together in the back, because I'm just going to take that extra seam allowance out of the back panels when I do my center back zipper. I'm going to have to stop for the night, but look at those pockets. I just love this skirt so much. So I am stopping for tonight, but good progress was made. We have technically a skirt. Tomorrow I will get that pinned, see where it needs to be, and then I will do the waistband and the zipper. We'll basically have a skirt. I'll see you then. Okay, a whole week has passed since I last was recording this, so bear with me. I'm trying to remember where we were. So I just had to scrap everything that I just said because I realized I have to put the waistband on before I can do the lap zipper. So we are going to put this waistband on, which in order to see where it needs to be, I folded it in half like it's going to be when it's on, and then I put it at my natural waist, and it fits me just fine with a seam allowance. So I'm going by this as my measurement. This is the perfect length, and this is going to be how wide I make the rest of it. So I'm going to attach this waistband, and then we're going to meet back, and I'm going to insert this metal zipper lapped. Actually, I just realized that before I can put the waistband on, I need to do my top stitching and finishing of all those seams. Let's finish these seams, top stitch them down. We're just going to make some progress on this skirt today. Why is it always the days that you think, oh yeah, I'm just going to quickly put this together, that ends up being the one where all kinds of mistakes are made, or just you have all these snags in making things? And that's what happened today. I just had some very frustrating things happen, and so I got frustrated and I didn't film them. But suffice it to say, we got there in the end. I finished all the seams inside, some of which look like this, because it busted my serger needles. It is so thick right there. This rigid denim is no joke. And then I did top stitch all of those down. I know you can't see that. You can barely see it in person, but you can tell these don't pull up, so it lays nice and flat. And then I had unfortunately, my usual struggle with the waistband on this. I am always forgetting that I should probably stay stitch the top of this, and I never do. And then I go to attach the waistband, and this part's too big. So I don't know if you can tell. Yeah, you can see it. I had to add some gathering stitches, and I gathered it in, and I have now attached the waistband. I have pressed the waistband, or I finished the inside of the waistband seam just because it was really unruly, and I have pressed it upward. I'm going to now press down the raw edge to the inside, and typically what you would do to finish the waistband is you would press that in by the seam allowance and then fold it on itself again, and either like stitch in the ditch right there, or top stitch, or invisible stitch it from behind by hand. And then I'm going to insert my zipper, and we're gonna see how that goes too, because she's thick. I have now transferred that mark to the inside because I'm a dingbat and I didn't think about that. But since I'm doing a lap zipper, the first step is to baste that section together where the zipper is going to go, and then sew the rest of that seam down. So I'm, as you can see, angling downward here, down to the regular seam allowance. The top of my zipper is going to be about right there. And so at about this point, is when I'm just going to go straight down and fully stitch it. No basting. Okay, my favorite zipper method is the one that comes inside vintage zipper instructions. It's the best. So I've basted that section, and now I have the zipper sitting just to the side of where the seam is, and I'm going to machine baste right next to the coils. Now that that's basted in place, the next step is to flip it. So it was like this. Now I'm going to flip it this way. Now I'm going to top stitch just in that little bit of fabric. See that seam right there that I just created? I'm going to top stitch on that little blip of fabric that's right next to the teeth to secure it. Now I have it flipped outside. I have pressed this and I have marked just past the edge of my zipper with a red pin, because if I hit that metal zipper, then my machine is really not going to enjoy that. So now is the moment of truth. This is always the most nerve-wracking part of sewing a lap zipper. I'm now going to top stitch the lap. And because I have top stitching everywhere else, I'm going to continue that top stitching all the way down to match the other seams. So it is stitched down, and now this is the moment of truth. I'm going to unpick my basting stitches. Let's rip it. Yay! It actually looks really good. I was worried that this wasn't going to work very well because this is so thick, but looks really nice. I just made a nice big lap. I made sure to give plenty of seam allowance so that it could lap over fully. Yeah, I think it looks really nice. So now I'm going to finish the top stitching there, and then we're going to assess the waistband. I think this project is cursed a little bit. After all that, I got the zipper in, so now I can officially try it on, and I can pinch a good inch or inch and a half out of this. So it looks like we're going to be doing some skinnier alterations early. Okay, crisis averted, because I just did the exact alteration that I'm actually talking about with this video. So I now have a seam in my waistband, which is not ideal, but it's not the end of the world. And I did have to undo that top stitching, which is expected to be done because I have to redo it. And that way you don't end up with any weird puckers. And now it is the actual shape of my waist and hips. It fits me. So now I gotta fold that waistband down and finish that, and then do the hem, and we're done. So, considerations when you are sewing for a changing body. It's something that I think is different for everyone depending on the style of clothes that they like to wear. Personally, I feel that you cannot go wrong with a fairly fitted t-shirt, but you can just change how tight you make the waist on a t-shirt. And that's a very easy thing to zip in again later. So the way that this t-shirt, and actually I just did a video recently, I'll link it up here, of me making a plantain top by Muse Patterns. And most t-shirts, if you're sewing them, you sew the front, you sew the back, you sew the sleeves in, then you do the side seam. And that's the last step before you finish it with the hem. So this shirt would be very simple to, even if my arms got smaller, I could just pinch this in where I wanted to, zip it down, and take it at the waist. I could also just take it in from like here down if I wanted to, if everything else fits. The thing about losing weight is typically your body frame, like where your shoulders end, will not change, right? Your bones are still going to be the same. So maybe you do have a thicker arm right now and that may go down, but where your shoulder seam should start, which is at just the break of your shoulder bone, essentially. You don't want it to go further. You want it to end right at the edge of your shoulder bone, right before the joint of your arm. So if you can get right here to fit, which is not going to change that much, then the rest of it is much easier, at least within a few sizes. You can very easily alter down and it won't look like you took it way in. And it's the same with skirts. If you can avoid things that have lots of details along the side of you. This skirt I'm wearing is a holly burn, which I love, but it has really awesome pockets that are at the side seam. Therefore, this is not a skirt that I would consider a great candidate for altering down, because I put those pockets in as one of the first steps of sewing this skirt. So everything else came after I sewed those side seam pockets. So I would have to undo the waistband, undo everything, unless I wanted to make the pockets smaller, which I don't. I like the size of these pockets. They're great for my hands. They fit my phone. And so I would be sacrificing the details I love about the skirt if I was trying to take it in. I also avoid, side zippers. I would make sure that the zipper is at the back, and that way you're not having to undo all of that work. It's a fairly simple operation to just zip it in and you're good to go. It's really not very hard to make yourself a cute skirt that can change with you. Okay, so that is my finished skirt. I am thrilled we got here in the end. So once again, this is the Melissa skirt by Muse Patterns. It's actually a dress pattern, but this is my favorite skirt. I am not affiliated with them in any way. This just happens to be my favorite pattern, but it also works really well if you are planning on changing in size, or if you hope to be. This isn't a commentary on, hey, we all need to lose weight or anything like that. But if you're planning that, if that is something that you're trying to achieve, but you still want to have clothes that represent you and that you made yourself, this is a great one to give a try. And as you saw in the video, I had to take it in. And you really wouldn't know. Like, no one's going to know that except for you, me pointing this out in this video. I'm never going to tell people in real life, oh yeah, this was too big and I had to take it in. It doesn't look like I did. It looks perfectly normal and fine. So I hope that this can encourage you to look at different features of patterns to decide what might be good to change over time with you. Sometimes it's that we need to add extra seam allowance because we know we might gain weight in the future, and that way everything's still built in, but you still need to consider the order of operations of how simple it's going to be to alter it in either direction. Since the pockets are so cute and they're not on the side seams, this doesn't sacrifice practicality. It still is a perfectly functional skirt with pockets, and I can take it in at will. So hopefully, I was expecting this sewing project to go way simpler than it ended up doing, but such is life sometimes. I'm glad that it got there in the end. I really am happy with my finished skirt. And I know that it's a bit stiff, but this is denim, and just like new jeans, the more you wash it, the more it's going to add some drape to it. So I'm kind of looking forward to see how this looks after a little bit of time and a few washes. And that's all I have for you today. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give me a like and subscribe if you want to stick around. I am always making things, so if you are curious to see what I make in the future, I would love to have you. Until next time, I hope that whatever it is that you're sewing, you have a much less drama-filled version of it than I just did.